Imagine you are walking alone through a dense forest at dusk. The path is familiar, yet something feels slightly off. The wind whispers through the trees, carrying a sound you cannot quite place. You feel a tug in your chest, a restless pull that makes you pause. You look around, trying to find the source, a rustle, a shadow, a figure, but there is nothing there. Still, the feeling persists, urgent and undeniable. It is not coming from the forest, and it is not coming from anyone nearby. It is coming from inside you. It is a message your mind has been trying to deliver, quietly at first, now impossible to ignore. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That tug in your chest, the urgency you feel, is the unconscious calling. It is asking you to pay attention, to notice what you have been avoiding, and to bring what is hidden into the light. Today, we are going to explore what it means when that message comes, why it feels so urgent, and how listening to it can transform confusion into growth. The unconscious often communicates through emotional urgency rather than clear words, and this is something most people experience long before they understand it. You suddenly feel uneasy without knowing why, or a thought keeps returning even when you try to distract yourself. There is no obvious reason, no clear message, yet the feeling is strong and persistent. Jung believed this happens because the unconscious does not use logical language. It does not speak in sentences or explanations. It uses emotion as a signal. Urgency is one of its strongest signals because it cuts through denial and avoidance. When something inside you needs attention, emotion becomes louder than reason. This urgency is not dramatic for the sake of drama. It develops when a part of the psyche has been ignored for too long. Maybe a feeling was pushed away because it was uncomfortable, or a truth was avoided because it challenged the image you had of yourself. The unconscious does not disappear just because it is ignored. Instead, it gathers energy. Over time, that energy turns into emotional pressure. This is when people say they feel restless, heavy, or strangely alert for no clear reason. According to Jung, this is the psyche saying that balance has been disturbed and something must be brought into awareness. People often misunderstand this urgency and try to explain it externally. They assume something outside them is causing it, like another person or a sudden change in circumstances. Jung would say this is a natural mistake because the mind prefers simple explanations. But emotional urgency usually comes from within. It is the unconscious trying to communicate in the only way it can. Since it cannot speak directly, it creates a feeling strong enough that consciousness cannot ignore. The feeling itself is the message. It is not asking for immediate action, but for honest reflection and attention. Emotional urgency often appears when a person is at a psychological crossroads. Something in their inner life is ready to change, but the conscious mind is still holding on to old patterns. This creates tension. The unconscious pushes forward while the conscious mind resists. The result is a sense of pressure, like something important is about to happen but hasn't yet taken form. Jung believed this tension is necessary for growth. Without it, people would never question their habits, beliefs, or emotional reactions. Urgency is uncomfortable, but it is also purposeful. Another important aspect is that urgency does not explain itself. It does not arrive with instructions. This is why people feel confused by it. They want clarity, but the unconscious first demands attention, not answers. Jung emphasized that meaning comes later, after reflection. When someone sits with the feeling instead of escaping it, patterns begin to emerge. Memories surface. Repeated emotional themes become visible. Over time, what felt like chaos starts to make sense. The urgency softens once it feels heard, even before everything is fully understood. In everyday life, this process often goes unnoticed. People distract themselves, stay busy, or seek reassurance outside themselves, but the urgency keeps returning because its purpose has not been fulfilled. Jung saw this as the psyche's way of protecting wholeness. Emotional urgency is not there to disturb peace, but to restore balance. It pushes what is hidden into the light of awareness. When someone learns to listen to these inner signals with patience instead of fear, they begin to understand themselves more deeply, and the urgency naturally loses its intensity as understanding grows. What feels like a message from another is often a reflection of something unresolved within the self, and this idea can be uncomfortable at first. Most people prefer to believe that strong emotions are caused by external forces. It feels easier to say that someone else triggered the feeling, or that the emotion came from outside. Carl Jung suggested that this reaction is natural, because the mind is designed to protect the image we have of ourselves. When an unresolved issue rises from within, the psyche often projects it outward, so it feels less personal. The feeling still demands attention, but now it appears to come from another source, rather than from the self. Projection happens when an inner conflict has not yet been recognized consciously. Instead of admitting uncertainty, longing, or fear, the mind attaches these feelings to someone else. Jung believed this is how the unconscious tries to speak without directly confronting the ego. The emotion becomes easier to tolerate when it feels external, but the intensity remains because the true source has not been addressed. This is why the feeling can seem so vivid and personal, as if it carries intention or meaning beyond normal thought. The psyche is using relationship imagery to express something that has not yet been understood internally. Unresolved inner material often forms around experiences that were emotionally significant but never fully processed. This could be disappointment, unmet expectations, or parts of the personality that were suppressed to maintain stability. Over time, these parts do not disappear. They wait. When conditions are right, they reappear as emotional signals that feel urgent and meaningful. Jung explained that the unconscious prefers symbols and emotional impressions rather than direct explanations. So the message does not arrive as a clear idea. It arrives as a sense that something important is being communicated, even if the content feels unclear. The reason this feels like it comes from another person is because relationships are powerful symbols in the psyche. They represent connection, recognition, and emotional truth. When the unconscious wants attention, it often uses the image of another because it carries emotional weight. The feeling seems relational, but its origin is psychological. This does not mean the emotion is false. It means it is symbolic. Jung emphasized that symbols are real experiences pointing toward inner truth. The mistake is taking them literally instead of psychologically, which keeps the real issue hidden and unresolved. As long as the feeling is believed to come from outside, the inner work is postponed. The person waits for clarification, reassurance, or resolution from something external. Meanwhile, the unconscious continues sending the same signal in different forms. This repetition is not punishment, it is persistence. The psyche repeats what has not been understood. Jung believed that growth begins when the individual turns inward and asks what this emotion reveals about their own inner state. When attention shifts from the imagined source to the inner experience, insight slowly develops. Understanding this process does not remove emotion instantly. Awareness does not erase feeling, but it changes the relationship with it. Instead of feeling controlled by an imagined message, the person begins to listen inwardly. The emotional intensity starts to feel less mysterious and more meaningful. Jung saw this as a step toward individuation, where unconscious material becomes conscious and integrated. The feeling no longer needs to disguise itself as something external, because it has finally been acknowledged where it truly belongs. Urgency appears when the psyche wants conscious attention and integration, and this is one of the most important ideas in Jung's psychology. The mind is not a single, unified voice. It is made of many parts, some of which operate outside conscious awareness. When these parts are ignored or pushed aside, they do not disappear. They wait for the right moment to be noticed. Urgency is the signal that one of these inner elements is ready to be brought into awareness. It is not meant to create fear or pressure, but to pull attention towards something that needs to be understood and integrated into the conscious self. Integration means allowing an unconscious element to become known rather than rejected. Jung believed that psychological health depends on this process. When a thought, emotion, or impulse is denied, it becomes isolated and stronger. Over time, this separation creates inner tension. The psyche then increases the intensity of emotional signals to force recognition. This is where urgency comes from. It is the unconscious saying that separation can no longer continue. The feeling becomes difficult to ignore because the psyche is seeking balance, not chaos. Urgency is uncomfortable, but it carries a purpose connected to inner harmony. Many people interpret urgency as a sign that something external must be acted on immediately. Jung would caution against this reaction. Urgency does not always demand action in the outer world. More often, it asks for inner reflection. The psyche wants consciousness, not impulsive movement. When someone reacts without reflection, the deeper meaning remains hidden. The urgency may fade temporarily, but it returns later in another form. Jung saw this repetition as evidence that the unconscious has not yet been integrated. Awareness, not reaction, is what reduces the intensity of the signal. The moment a person turns inward and observes the feeling without judgment, integration begins. This does not mean analyzing everything intellectually. It means allowing the emotion to exist and asking what it represents. Often, urgency points to a neglected need, an unexpressed truth, or a conflict between who someone is and who they believe they should be. Jung believed these conflicts are essential for growth. They force the personality to expand beyond old limitations. Urgency marks the point where growth becomes possible, even if it feels uncomfortable at first. Integration also requires patience. The unconscious does not reveal everything at once. It unfolds slowly as trust develops between conscious awareness and inner experience. When urgency is met with curiosity instead of resistance, the psyche responds by softening its intensity. The emotion begins to change shape. What once felt overwhelming becomes meaningful. Jung described this as the transformation of raw emotion into insight. The feeling no longer needs to shout because it has been acknowledged. Integration does not eliminate emotion, but places it within a larger understanding of the self. Over time, this process leads to greater inner stability. The person becomes less reactive to emotional urgency because they recognize it as communication rather than threat. Jung believed this was a sign of psychological maturity. Instead of being controlled by unconscious impulses, the individual learns to listen and respond consciously. Urgency becomes a guide rather than a disturbance. When inner elements are integrated, the psyche no longer needs to demand attention so forcefully because balance has been restored within the self. Projection makes inner truths feel like they are coming from outside, and this is one of the most subtle processes Jung described. Most people are unaware when they are projecting because projection feels real. The emotion feels justified, logical, and connected to something external. In reality, projection happens when a part of the psyche is not yet accepted or understood. Instead of recognizing this part internally, the mind places it onto someone or something outside. This protects the ego from discomfort, but it also distorts perception. What is actually an inner truth now appears to come from elsewhere, making it harder to recognize and integrate. Jung believed projection is not a flaw, but a natural psychological mechanism. It helps people cope with emotions that feel too intense or confusing to face directly. When a feeling is projected, it gains distance. That distance makes it easier to tolerate. However, the cost of this relief is misunderstanding. The person believes the emotion belongs to the outside world, so they look outward for answers. Meanwhile, the unconscious continues to carry the unresolved material. The stronger the projection, the stronger the emotional reaction becomes, because the real source remains untouched and unexamined. This process often begins early in life. Certain traits, desires, or emotions may have been discouraged or misunderstood, leading the psyche to hide them. These hidden aspects do not vanish. They wait in the unconscious. Later, when a situation activates them, they emerge through projection. The person feels an intense reaction that seems sudden and external. Jung explained that projection is the psyche's way of expressing what has been disowned. It uses outer experiences as a mirror to show what has not yet been accepted within. One of the reasons projection feels convincing is because it carries emotional charge. The reaction feels personal and immediate. Logic often comes afterward, trying to justify the feeling. Jung warned that this is how people become trapped in emotional patterns. They keep responding to the same situations in similar ways, believing the cause lies outside themselves. The unconscious repeats the projection until awareness develops. Only when someone pauses and reflects on the intensity of their reaction does the possibility of insight arise. The feeling that someone has sent you an urgent message, the pull in your chest that makes you stop and pay attention, is far more than a casual thought or coincidence. Carl Jung would say that these experiences are windows into the unconscious, signals that a part of your mind wants recognition. Often, what we perceive as external pressure or a message from someone else is actually the reflection of something unresolved inside ourselves. The psyche uses symbolism, emotion, and urgency to communicate because it cannot speak in literal words. These inner signals appear persistent and compelling because they carry meaning that has not yet been understood or integrated. When the mind projects these feelings outward, it can feel like the source of urgency is someone else or a situation in the world. But Jung emphasized that projection is a natural defense mechanism. It allows emotions, desires, or fears that are difficult to face to exist in a more tolerable form. By believing the feeling originates externally, the conscious mind can avoid direct confrontation with itself. The intensity remains because the unconscious material has not yet been acknowledged. Each time a person feels this pull, it is an invitation to look inward, to recognize what the psyche is attempting to reveal. These moments of urgency often coincide with crossroads in life, times when old patterns, habits, or unresolved issues demand attention. The unconscious does not operate on schedules or logic, it operates on meaning. When something in our inner life has been neglected, it sends signals that may feel pressing, confusing, or even alarming. They appear as restlessness, sudden thoughts, recurring emotions, or an unshakable feeling that something must be addressed. Jung believed that these signals are essential for growth, for bringing unconscious material into consciousness, which is the essence of individuation, the process of becoming whole. Ignoring these signals does not make them disappear. Life has a way of repeating patterns until the inner lesson is understood. Relationships, situations, and emotions often recur in ways that reflect what has been left unresolved. These repetitions are not accidents or bad luck. They are attempts by the psyche to communicate and guide the conscious mind toward awareness. The moment of urgency is the point where attention must shift inward. This shift is the beginning of transformation, turning confusion into insight and emotional pressure into psychological growth. Recognizing projection requires honesty rather than self-blame. Jung emphasized that projection is not something to judge, but something to observe. The question is not whether the outer situation exists, but why it triggers such a strong inner response. When attention shifts inward, the projected material slowly returns to its rightful place within the psyche. This can feel unsettling at first, because it challenges long-held beliefs about cause and responsibility. Yet it is also freeing because it restores inner authority and clarity. As projection dissolves, perception becomes clearer. The outer world feels less charged and more balanced. The person begins to respond instead of react. Jung believed this process was essential for individuation, the development of a whole and integrated self. When inner truths are reclaimed from projection, emotional energy is no longer scattered outward. It becomes available for understanding and growth. The psyche no longer needs to disguise its messages through the outside world because they are finally being heard within. Ignoring inner signals leads to repetition in relationships and life patterns, and this is something many people experience without realizing why it happens. A person may notice the same emotional situations appearing again and again, even when the outer circumstances seem different. Jung believed this repetition is not coincidence or bad luck. It is the psyche attempting to resolve something that has not yet been understood. When inner signals are ignored, the unconscious does not give up. Instead, it recreates similar experiences in new forms, hoping that awareness will eventually develop. These inner signals often begin as subtle feelings. A sense of discomfort, hesitation, or emotional pull appears, but the conscious mind quickly dismisses it. Life moves fast, and ignoring inner cues feels practical. However, what is ignored does not disappear. It sinks deeper into the unconscious, where it gathers strength. Over time, the psyche finds external situations that resemble the unresolved inner conflict. Jung described this as a psychological pattern rather than fate. The same theme returns because the inner lesson remains incomplete. Relationships are one of the most common areas where repetition appears. People may find themselves drawn to similar dynamics, even when they consciously want something different. Jung explained that the unconscious seeks familiarity, not comfort. It is drawn to situations that reflect unresolved material. Until that material is brought into awareness, the psyche continues to recreate conditions that resemble it. This is not self-sabotage, but an attempt at resolution. The unconscious repeats what has not been integrated, hoping that consciousness will eventually recognize the pattern. Ignoring inner signals also affects life choices beyond relationships. Career dissatisfaction, emotional burnout, and recurring frustration often point to inner needs that have been overlooked. Jung believed that the psyche strives for balance and meaning. When someone lives in a way that contradicts their inner nature, tension develops. If this tension is ignored, it shows up as repeated obstacles or dissatisfaction. The outer repetition mirrors the inner conflict. The person feels stuck, not because life is against them, but because their inner signals have not been acknowledged. Repetition continues until awareness interrupts it. Jung emphasized that insight, not effort, breaks the cycle. Trying harder without understanding simply recreates the same outcome. When someone finally pauses and reflects on their emotional patterns, the repetition begins to lose its grip. Recognition brings choice. The moment a pattern is seen clearly, it no longer needs to repeat itself in the same way. The unconscious relaxes because its message has been received. This process requires patience and honesty. Inner signals are not always clear or comfortable. They may challenge long-held beliefs or expectations. But Jung believed that listening to these signals leads to greater psychological freedom. When inner messages are respected, life patterns begin to change naturally. Relationships feel less repetitive, choices feel more aligned, and emotional experiences become more meaningful. The psyche no longer needs to repeat itself because it has finally been understood. Awareness transforms emotional confusion into psychological growth, and this is one of the most profound ideas in Jungian psychology. Most people experience strong feelings, restlessness, longing, fear, or urgency without understanding their origin. These emotions often feel overwhelming or mysterious. leading to confusion. Jung believed that this confusion is not a flaw or a problem to be fixed immediately. It is a signal that the unconscious is trying to communicate something important. Emotional confusion is the language of the inner world, and when it is acknowledged consciously, it becomes the starting point for growth and self-understanding. The first step toward transformation is noticing the emotion without judgment. Instead of labeling it as bad, wrong, or unreasonable, awareness allows the feeling to exist. Jung emphasized that observing without immediate reaction creates space for understanding. When someone steps back from the intensity, they can begin to ask, "Why do I feel this way?" and "What does this emotion point to within me?" The answers often lead to insights about neglected needs, hidden fears, or unrecognized desires. Emotional confusion is not random. It reflects unfinished inner work waiting to be acknowledged. This process also involves patience. The unconscious does not reveal its messages all at once. Sometimes the meaning unfolds slowly over days, weeks, or even years. Jung compared this to tending a garden. The seeds of insight must be nurtured, not forced. By remaining attentive to the emotional signals, a person allows the unconscious to speak in its own way. Over time, patterns and connections emerge, making what once felt chaotic become understandable. Emotional confusion gradually becomes a guide, showing where personal growth is possible and where inner attention is needed most. Awareness also transforms the energy of emotion itself. When feelings are ignored or suppressed, they can become intense, intrusive, and exhausting. Jung explained that suppressed emotions do not vanish. They continue to influence thoughts, behaviors, and relationships. By bringing attention to them, the energy contained in the emotion can be redirected. What once felt like turbulence can become a source of clarity, motivation, or creativity. The unconscious, when listened to, provides wisdom rather than confusion. Awareness turns the raw material of emotion into constructive insight. Another important aspect is self-integration. Emotional confusion often arises when parts of the self have been denied or neglected. Jung called this the shadow, the aspects of personality we do not fully acknowledge. Awareness allows the shadow to be recognized without fear or rejection. By observing inner conflicts and contradictions, a person begins to incorporate them into a more complete understanding of themselves. This integration reduces inner tension and creates balance. The emotion no longer needs to manifest as confusion or urgency because its purpose has been fulfilled through conscious recognition. Awareness also fosters responsibility and choice. When emotional signals are noticed and understood, reactions become conscious rather than automatic. Jung believed that psychological growth is not about controlling every feeling, but about learning to respond instead of reacting. Understanding the meaning behind emotions gives the individual power to act with insight rather than impulse. Life becomes less dictated by unconscious drives and more guided by conscious understanding. Emotional confusion, once transformed, becomes a teacher rather than a disruptor, guiding the person toward maturity and wholeness. Finally, awareness connects the inner world with outer life. When emotions are observed and understood, relationships, decisions, and daily experiences take on more clarity and depth. Patterns that once caused frustration begin to make sense, and repeated challenges can be met with insight rather than reaction. Jung believed that this transformation is the essence of individuation, the process of becoming a complete and integrated self. Emotional confusion is not a hindrance, but a doorway. Through conscious awareness, what once felt like chaos becomes the foundation for growth, wisdom, and psychological freedom. In the end, the message that feels urgent, the feelings that seem overwhelming, and the emotions that pull at us constantly are never random. They are the language of the unconscious, trying to speak in a way we cannot ignore. What seems external often reflects what has been left unresolved inside, and the urgency we feel is not a call to panic, but a call to awareness. Every restless thought, every repeated pattern, every projection, and every surge of emotion is an invitation to understand ourselves more deeply, to integrate what has been hidden, and to bring balance to our inner world. When we stop running from these signals and start listening, we begin to transform confusion into insight, tension into growth, and repetition into learning. Emotional urgency is not a disturbance to escape, but a guide pointing us toward wholeness. It teaches patience, honesty, and the courage to face parts of ourselves we may have avoided. Jung reminds us that the path to psychological maturity is not about controlling or eliminating feelings, but understanding them, embracing them, and letting them inform the choices we make consciously. Ultimately, the urgency is not about the outside world at all. It is about the self calling for attention, reflection, and integration. By acknowledging these inner messages, we reclaim emotional energy that once controlled us. We recognize the patterns that shaped our lives, and we open the door to personal growth. Every feeling that feels pressing, every inner signal that disturbs our calm, is an opportunity to become more whole, more aware, and more alive. The message is urgent, yes, but its purpose is not to alarm. It is to awaken us to the richness of our own inner world and the possibility of understanding ourselves in ways we may never have imagined.